This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
We have been crisscrossing Ottawa and the region, meeting all of the candidates running in the upcoming Ontario election. Of course, Election Day is February 27th, but head out to those advanced polls just in case Mother Nature makes it snow that day. We want to make sure everybody heads to the polls. We want to meet the candidates now for Ottawa-Vanie. And we'd like to start with Miriam Gillane, Christian Prue, Corinne Corcoran, and Lucille Collard. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have some opening statements. Miriam, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I'm Miriam Gillane, your Ontario NDP candidate for Ottawa-Vanie, and I'm honored to have this platform. My campaign has one goal: to elevate the voices of our community, voices that have been ignored for far too long. Residents constantly share with me their struggles to make ends meet and the hope they have for a better future. Yet those in power are not listening. We've been taken for granted. Ottawa-Vanie has been represented by a Liberal since '71, and they act like they're done working for you. Complacency is the enemy of progress. Governments, both Liberal and Conservative, have underfunded education, healthcare, even as the cost of living rises. It's easy to blame Doug Ford, but we can't forget that the Liberals have set the stage for those failures. The NDP's Home Ontario plan recognizes that the government needs to do its part because Liberals and Conservatives alike do not have your best interest at heart. There are two sides of the same coin. You deserve better from your government.
Christian.
Thank you very much. My name is Christian Prue. I was born and raised in Ottawa-Vanie, and I still call it my home too. I'm a gay father of three, and I have a granddaughter as well. I have a background in construction, plumber by trade, and with 20 years construction experience as a supervisor. I've worked in projects large and small, but I've always taken a practical approach and always keeping an eye on the goal. And what we've forgotten here in Ottawa-Vanie is on the goal. The goal should be to putting the needs of people first and making sure that those needs are addressed first. What we do, it's nice when you can deal with the symptoms. It looks like you're doing a lot. But at the end of the day, it's very wasteful, and you can see that things are unraveling. If we think we've done a good job, it's hard to say that because everything's unraveling from our healthcare, education, homelessness, affordability, everything.
Thank you. Corinne.
Hi, my name is Corinne Corcoran, and I represent the Ontario Libertarian Party. I'm 55 years old, I'm Generation X, and I am tired. I'm tired of the media manipulating public opinion. I'm tired of our governments at every level using fear to control and divide us, but I'm especially tired of watching Canadians sitting back and letting it happen. Ontario needs a vision to hold us together. More government handouts to individuals and picking which companies and industries to bail out lead to less inspiration, imagination, and innovation. Ontario has an educated workforce that could become leaders in their respective industries if given the freedom to create without the constraints imposed upon them by government regulation and bureaucracy. Less government control and more personal freedom to choose what is right for our families will lead to an Ontario that is thriving instead of declining. Thank you.
Lucille.
Thank you. My name is Lucille Collard with the Liberal Party, and I want to start by thanking Rogers for organizing this very important exercise for our democracy. My civic engagement started more than 20 years ago, where I work as the president of the school council where my kids were going, but as an elected official 15 years ago, where I became trustee with the Public French Board for 10 years. I was also the president of that board, and then I got drawn into provincial politics. I've been the MPP for the last 5 years. And I have to say that I'm very proud of the work that I've done for our community. The opening of the Tres des Bois School is certainly an accomplishment that encouraged me to continue in provincial politics. And as an MPP, even in the opposition, I was able to get concrete results, like the adoption of a legislation to help survivors of human trafficking and securing funding for the opening of a nurse practitioner clinic here in our riding. And I want to continue to work for you and for our families.
Thank you, Lucille. We have a number of questions for you today. We're going to start with you, Miriam. We know that housing and homelessness in this province has skyrocketed, especially during the pandemic. What will you do for the people of Ottawa-Vanie, the people of Ontario that are looking for safe and affordable housing?
I think when we talk about housing, there's two things to really talk about. First off, the lack of affordable housing. We are seeing people being pushed out of homes. They've got full-time jobs. I met somebody the other day who was an engineer, a full-time job. She can't afford to stay in her one-bedroom apartment in Vanier. That's not excusable by any standard. And then on the side of that, we've also got a homelessness crisis, which also goes back to housing. We need to make sure that there is a healthy supply of affordable housing within our country, within our province, and it is a shame to look at the bottom and the most vulnerable of our society. That is a reflection of where we're at in our society.
Debate.
Sure, I'd like to say, what the Liberal Party has as a concrete plan to help with affordable housing. We know that affordable housing is a real issue, and unfortunately, it has the sad consequences of even putting people in the street. So what we need to do is reduce the cost of housing. That's a very important aspect, because if we want people to be able to afford a house, the house cost of building them needs to be lower. And that's why we want to remove those hidden tax for the constructors so that the price of the house will be lower. So with the Liberal Party, we want to remove the land transfer tax for first-time buyers, for seniors downsizing, and for nonprofit home builders. And that could save a total of $13,500 per home. It's a very important measure. I think there's a great potential to invest for nonprofit housing.
The Green Party believes that, you can have everybody help chipping in. Like, everybody can help in. So then, if you already have a home, well then, and you earn under $100,000, well, the Green Party will offer a grant to help you add that secondary unit so they can rent out, and then actually you can earn yourself some income and actually help build a more resilient society that way. And then at the same time, and if you earn more than that, well, there's still going to be long-term zero-interest loans to help build that affordable housing that we need. We need more supply, but we also need to build the houses that people need, not just what people want. We need to deal with the needs.
COVID lockdowns have accelerated our homelessness and our inflation in this province. We currently do have in Ottawa the ability to build coach homes in our yards. I don't know how many people are taking advantage of that. It's an opportunity for people in the riding to actually build a small home in their backyard for other people.
Thank you. Rebuttal.
I'll address one point that was made around the idea of giving tax breaks to build more homes. Developers have shown time and time again that if they are going to get a tax break, they're not going to pass that saving onto the consumer. They're going to be taking that as additional profit. We also need to look at the amount of empty, instead of just talking about building homes, we need to talk about all the empty condos on Rideau Street that are not sold.
Thank you. We know that the drug challenges in this province, the addiction challenges, opioid challenges, have put a lot of pressure on the healthcare system. What will you do, Christian, to care for those in this province, support those in those provinces that are facing these addictions issues?
Again, we're going to come back to the same thing again. It's just like we're not looking after our needs first. We're more focused on the, and if you look at it, it is a symptom. I mean, the drug addiction is a symptom of neglect. It's a symptom of society that we're not doing our job. And that should have been our first clue right there, that we're doing the wrong thing. 30 years ago, you hardly saw anybody homeless. It was more something you had seen on TV. Now it's everywhere. And then we seem to be okay with it. We live in Canada. It's a very cold place. And you also have a lot of drug addiction. People can't cope. We don't give them the tools that they need for them to be able to cope with society of today.
Debate.
Yeah, what we need to do really is to make sure that we help those people. We don't need to stigmatize those people any more than they are already. I know it's a big burden for our society. We do have in Ottawa-Vanie a real issue with that. But what we need is supportive housing. Those people need to be looked after, and it's a responsibility of all levels of government. So they all need to pitch in to build those housing with the support that they need. We need to invest resources, and that's something that I've been fighting for at Queen's Park. I've, spoken with the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions to help with that. I brought him in the riding so he could see for himself that that's the kind of help we need. And so we need to continue to ask for the province to chip in and make sure that those supportive housing are built to help those people regain their dignity and regain a sense of living.
It's not just about housing, however, because we do look at issues like homelessness or the mental health crisis, and we look at them as all individual parts of a puzzle. And when we're tackling all of these things one at a time, with things like over-policing them or criminalizing, which we're criminalizing not what is happening to people, but we're criminalizing their vulnerability, their
Actually,
situation.
if you
we're
speak to
blaming
the
the victim.
people, if you
Correct.
speak to the people who have to deal with the impact of this crisis of addiction, you need to understand that what people want is to get those people off the street.
I think what
There's
we
an
need to
issue
look
with
at-
needles, and we need to address that.
We need to look at options outside of the government as well. There's a great organization in this country called Homes for Heroes. They've built tiny home communities for returning veterans where they have support systems with psychiatrists in that little organ.
But we need to
area.
fund
Those are
those
great for
organizations.
gas, okay?
those
For the gas, for
it's
the holes
not-
that you have left around,
The-
I can see that
government
makes
is
a lot
not
of
the
sense.
only
Rebuttal
answer.
starts now. Your rebuttal
Oh,
starts
my
now.
rebuttal. Oh, sorry. Well, it starts. You got to start somewhere, and the thing too is that there's a lot of community organizations helping out right now, but I mean it's not their responsibility. The responsibility should be like to plug holes where there's lacks, where there might be someone that we didn't foresee. At the end of the day, I mean, if you look after the needs first, everything else becomes cheaper. There's benefits throughout society by dealing with the needs of people.
Thank you. Next question. We know that Ontario is facing, as all of Canada and the world, is facing climate change. It's a top concern for the people of Ontario. How will you tackle the climate issues here in the province of Ontario? Karine.
I would actually challenge that climate change is a top issue for people in Ontario right now. Even a few years ago, before we've encountered these issues with homelessness and healthcare, lack of healthcare, we saw on polls that the environment was falling in the below top 10 concerns for people. Economy is number one. In terms of climate change, we're looking at the air, the water, and the land. Those are our three priorities as the Ontario Libertarian Party. We want to make sure that our air, land, and water stays viable for our country, and climite change.
Debate.
So again, if you look at it, I mean, it's another way of how we're doing the wrong approach. So then by helping the environment, it makes a more sustainable environment. It makes more sustainable communities. And at the same time, if you look at it, if you would incentivize people to put solar panels to overproduce the amount of energy that they need and store more, they could actually earn an income from that. So rather than
actually
looking
gonna
at big
agree.
ways, why don't we
I'd like
looking
to
at
agree
ways you
with-
can help people individually?
I'd like to
It can
agree with
help
Mr.
with
Prue on that.
affordability. It can help all sorts of different ways. You have to look at different approach to the problems. Going with the big solutions just doesn't work. We can see the results of that.
It's
We've
a
been
ve-
doing that for
it's a very
30, 40 years.
holistic-
It doesn't work.
It's a very holistic world. You need the environment to be able to have a strong economy. All of these things are interconnected, and I would challenge the idea that this is not a concern for Ontarians. Hundreds of thousands of young people take to the street demanding climate action in this country. They're worried about their future. They're watching on television an oil spill in the ocean on fire.
Can we talk about solutions, though? I mean, you're right that everybody's concerned. Like, I want a healthy planet for my kids, and I'm sure everybody wants the same for our next generation. But we need to start acting. We need to invest in electrification and renewable energies. And it's really a shame that the Conservative government canceled all the Liberal plans of renewable energy when they came to power. And I agree with Mr. Prue about, solar panels. I actually have solar panels on my house, believe it or not, because that great retrofit program that existed before the Ford government canceled it. So we need to create those incentives. We need to help people retrofit their house, and all those efforts can make a difference at the end.
At the end of the day, if you're looking to make things more efficient and more affordable for people, you help people. They can become entrepreneurs even. So help themselves
Rebuttal.
out.
So I have to wonder what's going to happen to all those solar panels when they hit end of life. Where do those go? You drive down the 401, you see solar farms. It's on perfectly great land there. There's solar farms. Canada is a carbon sink. Nobody wants to talk about that. We produce less than 2% of the carbon emissions on this planet. We have other countries who are not going after their own residents for this made-up climate fund.
Thank you. Entrepreneurs and small businesses have been through many hardships in the last 5 years, particularly from pandemic closures, labor shortages, the red tape for small businesses. It has been challenging. What will you do for small business owners in the province of Ontario?
Yeah, it's a very important question, especially nowadays in the political environment that we find ourselves in with the threat, that's come from the South. Very important to support our small businesses. And I've met with small businesses over the course of my mandate, and they all require the support of the government. And we did help them during the pandemic, you're right, but that help needs to continue. We need, a plan, and we have a plan to cut small businesses' tax by half. This would be an incredible relief to allow them to just produce more and to contribute to the economy in a more significant manner. We have incredible microbrewers in the riding, and they need our support, and I've been fighting for that.
The NDP's really been using the opportunity of the threat of the tariffs as a moment to say whether they happen or not, whether they're paused or not. This is a moment to look at our country or at our province and go, we are vulnerable. We are in an incredibly vulnerable position. How do we make sure that whether this is the moment where we're imposed tariffs or not, how do we make sure we are never put in this position again? And how we do that is we invest in Canadian businesses. We encourage, we help out and support resilient supply chains within Canada, whether it be industries like steel, auto, agriculture. We have an incredible amount of business mind in this country, and yet we find ourselves so incredibly dependent on the American economy. How do we diversify who we trade with, whether it be...
I think it's priorities. It comes down to priorities again. We don't recognize, we like to talk about it, we don't recognize the benefits that small business brings in, the small local places. That's the backbone. Those are the ones that create the most jobs. That's what gives you entrepreneurship. It gives you variety. It makes your community livable. It's all part of the environment. It's all part of everything. And you have to look, if you look, and again, it comes down to the needs. It's the needs. There's certain needs that we need. We don't have to have everything made from China. There's a lot of things that can be made local. We can 3D print stuff. Why don't we have 3D hardware stores?
People keep going on about this, anti-American, buy Canadian, and they probably have never gone on the number 12 bus through this entire riding and seen the boarded up buildings all the way along. It's a tragedy that this riding that's so small, that has so much potential, has that much of the entrepreneurs, they've just left.
And Vanier keeps all these small businesses because we locked them out.
Rebuttal.
Thank you. And the small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and that's why it's so important to support them. And there's a number of things that we can do. Of course, we need to diversify our economy. We need to support, training new entrepreneurs that want to start business. We need also to look at new technology, because I think that the landscape of our small businesses is changing, and they need support. We need to look at interprovincial provincial trade right now, it's a very important thing.
Thank you. Healthcare is a top priority in this election. We know so many Ontarians, upwards of 14 million Ontarians without a family doctor right now. The wait times for any sort of special treatment, overburdened emergency rooms, it's putting pressure on families, on individuals living in this province. What will you do to ensure the people of Ontario have an improved healthcare system?
Well, firstly, we will be making it a priority because governments, both Liberal and Conservative, love to tout that we do not have money, we don't have money, we don't have money. However, they do find money for a lot of tax breaks, a whole lot of insider help that they're able to give out. However, if we don't make our healthcare system, which is a pride of Canada, it's a pride of Ontario, we need to invest in fixing it. It's not broken. It's not broken, we're throwing it out and that's it. Let's start anew with a two-tiered system. We need to fix the healthcare system we already have, and it's incredibly doable. Ask the people who work in the healthcare industry. They have firsthand knowledge on how to fix this. And let's make it a priority.
Debate.
Yes, of course. You always have to ask on the ground. You know, in the field, you can ask the experts all you want, and they will have a certain perspective, and I do respect that. But you also have to ask the people in the field, because they're the ones who see it day by day. And if you don't include them, and you keep hiring administrators, you're not helping caring for people. You're maybe helping the paperwork, but hire administrators to maybe clear some of that backlog paperwork and that overburden that they have, the doctors that they're not even paid for. Make it more pleasing, make it more of an area where, you know, attract the doctors by making better working conditions, by listening to the concerns that doctors have, by having community health hubs where, again, stop every time they talk about investing in healthcare.
Thank you,
they put up
Christian.
a
We'd
new
like to
hospital.
pitch
There's
in
always
as
a great
well.
big hospitals
Thank you.
everywhere.
Thank you,
How about
Christian. We'd like to
working?
pitch in as well, if
Okay,
that's okay.
yeah, that's fine.
And, you know, healthcare has been the #1 priority of the Liberals. The our healthcare system is in shambles because of the underfunding of the provincial government. So blame it on Doug Ford. He's been in power for 7 years, and he hasn't delivered on any real solution. We've seen Band-Aid. Of course, they brag about investing here and there, but it doesn't fix the system, and that's what we need to see. There are like 22,000 people without a family doctor in Ottawa-Vanie. That is unacceptable. So we need more family doctors. We need to open more space in our schools. We need to create more schools. And we need to look at the way the family doctors are funded, because the job is not attractive enough and they leave that area of practice to go work in emergency.
I think
the
we
problem
need
started
to.
a long time
I think
ago.
we need to stop looking at healthcare as a solely government-funded industry. There are countries around this world that have two-tier systems. Every other country, pretty much, except for Canada. We have to start looking at keeping the money in Canada instead of people going out.
Not gonna work.
How's it not going to work?
Let's not forget that the Liberals are the ones that set the stage for Ford's cuts. Hallway medicine was a Liberal invention. I have seen it with my own eyes, with my own family members in the hospital. By the end of their term, they left 1.8 million Ontarians without a family doctor. And they boasted about the lowest per capita health spending in Canada. This is a problem long in the making, and the Ontario NDP is dedicated to never letting that happen again.
We know that recently Ottawa's Mayor, Mark Sutcliffe, asked both the provincial and the federal governments to step in with more funding for the capital, particularly regarding the public transit system. What is your funding plan for Ottawa's LRT and public transit system? Christian.
Well, I think like the LRT, we have the system. We have to optimize it to make it work the way it should. Maybe it wasn't like the best route that we picked. We didn't optimize it for when you look at how travel patterns work. But we have a system. We have to work with it. And again, why are we not investing more in areas where people are more predominantly to take transit, where you have a better potential to increase ridership, and trial those areas so that you can find solutions for different parts of the city, rather than going to a grand scheme and study for 5 years. I mean, you can get going right off the door. Just start adding buses in certain areas where you can have the population and the desire to take it.
The first thing to do is really, we need to upload the LRT to the province. If the province takes care of that issue, then the city can concentrate in really investing in taking care of our public transit system, like the buses and the that are not running on time. People are tired of waiting for the OC Transfer bus to come by. We need to make sure that the municipality is in a position to invest in that and make it more efficient.
To add to that, if the province is willing to help fund the transit cost for the GTA, it's about time that they do it for a city like Ottawa. We are tired of being second best. We're tired of Ontario meaning the GTA. There are transit needs here that are incredibly valid. This is the nation's capital. We should have a functioning transit system. And something to add to the failures of our transportation systems is the fact that it's been proven and proven again that P3 funding systems are inefficient. We should not be privatizing our public services. Again, public transportation, those are public. Why is the private sector involved at all? Because we have seen it doesn't work.
We need to, we are stuck with this system now. We need to do something to work within it. Hopefully going forward, we will make better choices so that we're not just adding on to more and more boondoggles around this city. I ride the LRT, I ride the buses 2 or 3 times a week. And nothing, I don't know what problem was supposed to be solved with LRT, but it did not solve the get to work downtown faster problem. In fact, I know people who got out of the bus and back into their cars because it was
And we
slow.
still have the infrastructure for a transitway. We still have the infrastructure to bring back the buses.
Yes, again, like it's been proven time and time again that rail is the most efficient way of moving people. Whether or not the light rail system didn't really turn out the way it should have, and maybe there was really a lot of oversight, it doesn't mean that rail as itself is not a good option. What we're forgetting is that the promise with the LRT is that we're going to have sort of like a bubble system to pick up within the neighborhoods, but that's not in place. Ottawa, like in Vanier, there's areas, it's still regional routes serving it.
Thank you. We're on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin people. You have Wabano in your community. How will you support Indigenous people in Ontario?
Well, I know that this riding in particular has one of the highest populations of Indigenous people in the province. We've seen a lot of the same issues that we've already talked about, where healthcare isn't accessible to them. Homelessness is, one of the outcomes. We really need to look at people as individuals as a whole and make it, not just for Indigenous people, but just look at all individuals in our community and make sure that we have access to services and community support for all individuals in this province.
Thank you. Debate.
Yeah, I find that we always go with trying to find ways to make Indigenous folk live more like us, where we should be taking their teachings. And that is through reconciliation, is actually working together, understanding, over 10,000 years, you developed and found solutions to everyday common day problems, and we just choose to ignore that. I mean, you have to show respect, and that's where you start. Another thing too is Ottawa-Vanie is the 3rd largest community. If Inuit were all together, it would be the largest community outside of Nunavut. And that's because they come here for their medical services, and we need special supports for that. There's no hospitals in Nunavut, okay? So when they come down here, you need supportive housing. You're not going to send people alone on an operation. I mean, so you need those services. And then again, so you need to look at the reality that they face and then look at it in their eyes, not just yours.
We talked about this a little bit earlier about bringing back dignity to people. And I think this is something that it gets ignored a lot when we talk about Indigenous rights. We've had a Conservative government that has consistently slashed Indigenous affairs' budget. They have dragged Ontario backwards in terms of reconciliation. And then we've got a Liberal government which throughout the years has given us lip service. And what we need is not lip service. We don't need apologies. We don't need big empty words. We need concrete action.
Can I propose?
respect.
Can I
Mutual
propose
respect and
concrete
dignity.
action? Sorry, I haven't had a chance to say a word on this yet, but it's very important. And we need to listen to them. That's the first. We need to show them respect. We need to show them that we are interested in their stories, and we need to show them that we are willing to understand. Reconciliation is not
Their
going to
stories should
happen
all be in their
overnight.
schools. We
It's
should
a
all learn
long
about the stories
work
like
in
I did when I was
progress,
younger.
and we need
Thank
to do
you.
that.
Rebuttal.
So I understand we do have some community services available to our Indigenous community members here in Ottawa-Vanie. I think, again, the support systems that are there, some of them are government, some of them are not. I think we need to just expand where we can outside of the government to help people, help the Indigenous people have their needs met how they deem them.
Thank you so much. We know that there is a severe backlog in Ontario courts, and it's concerning to many victims of crime. In addition, many jails are bursting at the seams. How will you ensure the legal system in Ontario is improved?
Now,
So,
you're talking my language because I'm a lawyer by trade, and I've seen the underfunding of our legal system, and that's why the backlog exists. That's why people cannot get justice. We need to invest in our legal system. There's not enough adjudicators, and when it takes too long, people lose their right to continue to fight with a tribunal. We've seen the land and the landlord and tenant tribunal has been the worst, to the point that people, are evicted and are on the street. We need to invest much more, and that's not what the government is doing right now.
There's one thing, is
Debate.
that it's nothing new. Like the backlogs in the legal system has been, ever since I can remember, it's always been there. And one thing is that does happen. You can just see, if you look at things in terms of cost rather than in terms of need, you're never going to please, you're never going to be able to satisfy, you're never going to be able to keep up. And so there is a need for the legal system, just like many other things in our society. There are certain needs, certain basic needs, and you need to look after those, make sure those are attended to. Because if you just look at things in terms of cost, it's just going to cost you more later on, because you're not focused on the right thing. You have to focus on what it is that you're looking for. If it's a legal system, you're looking at someone to go through the legal system as quickly as possible and find resolution.
And as
if you look at it in way
fairly
of
as
cost,
possible. As fairly as possible.
well,
because I think
absolutely.
there is-
We're not in Back to the Future here with direct.
Oh, I know, but
yeah.
the legal system is still incredibly unfair and incredibly biased and has racial biases. And, if going back to, I'll bring it back to homelessness and the opioid crisis. When you criminalize poverty, you are targeting lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, which typically are not are much more diverse spaces. So that is a huge element in our legal system. And if we stopped criminalizing poverty and treated it like people are vulnerable, how do we address your needs? Maybe that would also take off a whole lot from our legal system. We would be alleviating the large burden that is there.
No, prevention is just so much cheaper. There's
Absolutely.
other ways. You don't have to have everything through a court case either. If you look at it, a marriage is a romantic transaction, and then a divorce is a financial one. And I mean, if you look at
Thank you.
things
Rebuttal.
everywhere.
Yeah, thank you. And jails was mentioned in the question, so I feel compelled to address that because the government is really focused on building more jails. I don't think we need more jails. What we need is to treat the people that are inside those jails. A lot of people don't belong there. A lot of people have mental health issues or addiction issues, and they found themselves in jails because we had nowhere else to put them, and that's really unfair. A lot of people, like 80% of those people in jails, are waiting for remand. So we don't need more
Thank
jails.
you.
We need a more efficient system.
we know the number of immigrants and refugees choosing to call Ontario home is high. How will you ensure that there are enough jobs, housing, healthcare, schools to serve them?
This feels like a very appropriate question. As the daughter of an immigrant, a lot of my A lot of the rest of my family came to Canada as refugees, fleeing a conflict in the late 80s. And they came here, they chose this country because of its welcoming spirit. They came here to be willing to work, and they did, no work was below them. And by investing in our province, in building more jobs here, in being more self-sustaining, we are making it that it is a more prosperable place to live in.
Thank you. Debate.
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, like immigration, we have to recognize that. I mean, we were for immigration, always for, because that's what promoted innovation, and that's what helped us. The more people that come from different places, the more you can innovate, the more different ideas you can get, a lot easier. And so we have to recognize the benefit of immigrants. And then it's really too bad to hear about all the misinformation about immigration, about the cost and stuff. It's an actual benefit to us. There's a reason we need.
I think one of the unfortunate things is that we're hearing from immigrants now who say they were sold lies to come to Canada. This wasn't the case maybe 20 years, 30 years ago. They're coming here on a point system that allows them to come into the country, and then those positions aren't recognized by whatever the organization is that runs them, either it's engineers or doctors or whatever. We've got a federal government and a provincial government that are not talking to each other, not working together on this issue. And it's tragic that we are actually, for the first time in my lifetime, I'm hearing about immigrants who are saying that I want to leave Canada.
Yeah, we should make a priority.
I'd like to weigh on this because, we have a shortage of workers, especially in our healthcare system. And immigrants or newcomers are a big portion of that solution. We need to facilitate internationally trained doctors to enter the profession. We need to create programs that will allow them to get what's missing and not ask them to redo their studies from the beginning, because it is discouraging for them. And we see too many doctors driving Uber. That is not acceptable. We've got low-hanging fruits to help with our shortage of workers, and they're more than willing to help. So let's put them to contribution.
Rebuttal.
My uncle was a doctor. He ran a hospital in Somalia where, he was able to have surgeries while guerrilla members were coming in and shooting up the place. And he did drive a taxi. And he did that in the 80s. So this problem is not new. It's immigrants have been struggling with this for a long time. It is not just this current government's issue. It has been for a long time.
Many of the municipalities in Ontario are facing crumbling infrastructure. Many of those mayors, over 400 municipalities in this province, come knocking on the province's door to help with repairs and upgrades. How will you ensure the province's infrastructure is safe for Ontarians?
Well, you have to make it a priority. First of all, we have to recognize what the infrastructure is for, and we've been letting it crumble. All in the, for the ease, maybe we can save some taxes or avoid a tax cut. We never had a tax cut. Anyways, and things don't get repaired. So it's just become a neglect. And so those are the foundation of our economy, is to have that infrastructure. And those municipalities, they need our support to make sure that it's the same, everybody has the same capacity to offer the same infrastructure province-wide. That's why it's a provincial responsibility. And we need to help the individual municipalities.
Debate.
Yeah, I think to begin with, we need to recognize that the way that our municipalities are funded is not appropriate. The province is too directive in what the municipalities can do, and this has to change. Municipalities know better what they need to have those infrastructures safe, where they need to invest, and we need to review that funding formula. And I think that's the responsibility of the province, to really consult with the municipalities and see how we can make it more efficient.
I think part of it too is that there are too many of these big projects that are trying to get off the ground, and I don't understand why somebody in Kingston, their taxes are going towards a potential tunnel in under the 401 or even to our LRT here. The money should stay in the communities and let them spend the money how they want it spent. It's difficult to justify taking taxpayer dollars, and it's all taxpayer dollars, to build something that maybe satisfies a small portion of a community and not looking at the bigger picture.
I think a thing that we see across different provincial governments we've had is this lack of vision, of forward-thinking vision. The idea that we need things right now, and no one ever thinks about preventative work. How do we make sure we invest so that in 10 years, this is not going to be costing us as much? And it's because at the end of the day, it's always about power. How do we remain in power? What do we do so that people will vote us in again and again and again? And so you're only thinking 4 years at a time. You're thinking, what do we do right now so we get elected again? And there's no long-term plan. We're not planning for how to make this cost less in the long term by investing in our services all the time.
Rebuttal.
Yes, so people always get impressed with the shiny things, and that's why you always get the big projects, because it draws attention and it looks like you're actually doing something. But if you look in a different perspective, if you look at a hose and then you keep putting duct tape every time you see a hole, and then every time you see a leak, like we all know, the duct tape is not going to work. Not for very long anyways. And then you keep adding duct tape. At the end of the day, it's cheaper to just buy another hose than the cleanup and all the duct tape you spent and all the manpower you spent, just the womanpower, just to spend.
Thank you. Long-term care for seniors is concerning for many families, including my own, facing those very difficult choices for their loved ones. Where do you stand on care for seniors?
Well, we saw through the COVID lockdowns that seniors were abandoned in long-term care homes. The military had to go in there weeks after the lockdown started. And when a report finally came out about that, we found out most of those people did not die of COVID. They actually starved to death or died of thirst because they were abandoned by the workers there. We need to make sure that our long-term care homes are being, I think there's a mix there of private and public that can work together to help make sure that our long-term care for our seniors is adequate.
Debate.
Unfortunately, when you add the two, private and public, they tend to compete against one another, and then at the end result, I mean, one is focused on profits and the other is focused on care. And really, when you look at it, I mean, we have to stop looking at trying to profit or in a cost measure for when it comes to needs. You got long-term care homes. We saw how the private sector treated long-term care homes. We saw how they were falling apart and how they had the worst report card. It was evidence then, and we chose not to do something about it. Even when they said, oh, then we're going to go in and make more inspections, most of the inspections were done by phone. They weren't done by the actually a physical inspection. Oh, by phone, everything okay? So how are you supposed to really verify that your controls are in? In the public sector, you're not looking for profit. Your only motivation is care and getting it done as most efficiently as possible.
There's also a level of accountability that comes from the public sector because you are using tax dollar money. You have a level of accountability you have to reach versus when you are allowing care to be taken in the hands of profit makers. You are allowing a predatory system to take advantage of some of the most vulnerable people in our society.
Yeah, we've seen the disaster that occurred during COVID, obviously. And, during that crisis, we called personal support workers, the PSWs, heroes. And then the government just abandoned them. If we want to have adequate assistance in those long-term care, we need to treat them correctly. We need to improve their working conditions because they have to work several jobs to make ends meet. It's the same thing for the other staff that works in long-term care facilities. We really need to do better and have some modern infrastructure so that we're more efficient at looking after those vulnerable people.
Rebuttal.
So again, we really can't just be looking to the government all the time as our only solution for every problem that ever comes across our path. There are successful, there are good and there are bad public and private long-term care homes. You can't just look at them all as if they're, only the public ones are good and the private ones are all bad, run by somebody who's only in it for profit. I think we have to start having real conversations about this.
Thank you. We know that Ottawa relies on tourism from our fellow Ontarians, from people from the States, obviously, and from the U.S., and indeed from the world. How will you support tourism in the capital?
Right. So, I mean, again, there's a responsibility for the province, and I think that the province needs to sit down with the municipality, with the city councillors, and really look at what would be more sufficient. We're very lucky here in Ottawa. It is a very attractive area to come for the tourist, and we need to encourage that. So we need to take care of our infrastructure. And I'm thinking about the Byward Market that has its own challenges, and so it's not so attractive as it was before. So we need to take care of these issues so that people want to come to the downtown area again. And investing in our small businesses is another way, because small businesses, it's our restaurants, it's our microbreweries.
So
it's
then,
what people
speaking
want.
of the Byward Market, I mean, you see that we forgot what the Byward Market was for. The reason why it's not popular anymore is because it was a market for local produce and everything local. And now, like a lot of the produce, the problem with local produce, they had to compete with produce from Mexico, because anybody can just buy anything and just put on display. Like, we do live in a free society, I agree with that. But then when you change the definition, or you forget what define a certain attraction, well, then you're going to lose out. So you need proper vision for that. Obviously, if you want to attract people, you need long-term vision. It's not just the flavor of the week either.
I think we need to also encourage people in Ottawa to be tourists in their own town. I remember going to the market as a teenager. I'd go to Rideau Centre, I'd go to the market. When I was older, I'd go to the market. That's where you went to the clubs. Now, with the way the suburbs have grown, everybody is very localized. They stay to their suburbs. If you wanted to go to a movie, you had to go downtown. There's been a hollowing out of our downtown here in Ottawa, and there really are. You're kind of hoping for cold weather in the winter so that the canal actually opens and people will come here. We also need to make sure, and I'm grateful to Mark Sutcliffe for this, he's really working with the airlines to get direct flights into this city. Why would I come to Ottawa if I have to stop in Toronto or Montreal to get here?
Yeah, there's a lot of encouraging through conventions. That's one way that usually we try as hard as possible to attract conventions. And another way is that recognize culture. Culture can bring you diversify your the willingness of people coming here. That's not just the parliament.
I mean, we're also all dancing around the fact that realistically the reason why people don't come downtown anymore is because of the homelessness crisis and the opioid crisis. And instead of trying to fix this,
I wouldn't put that.
I would care to say that that's and
rebuttal.
if you fix it with the police station.
Thank you. I think that, everybody has a responsibility to make the promotion of our city as a great place to visit. So we can all do that in different ways. Of course, we can do publicity, and I think we have to leverage this great advantage that we have here in Ottawa, which is bilingualism, right? So it can attract more people. We also need better transportation. That's been raised, and I agree with that. If it's easy for people to come, they will come, and I love that announcement about the federal
Thank you so much. I have one question for you. Each of you will have 1 minute to answer the same question, and we'll start with you. Ontarians are feeling the pinch, whether it be at the gas tank, with affordable housing, with keeping the lights on, keeping the heat on in their refrigerators. It's a challenging time. How will you make Ontario more affordable?
Again, I think I've mentioned this a few times now, but I think it's, and I echo Christian's statement on this. If we start by making sure that people's basic needs are addressed in an affordable way, if you are able to afford a roof over your head every day, to be able to pay your bills every day, to either put gas in your vehicle or to have reliable transportation, and you're able to feed yourself good, healthy food, we are going to be able to take Ontarians from just surviving, which is where they're at right now, but to thriving. If we're able to make a priority the basic needs that they have, that is how we encourage Ontarians to be able to then continue onwards and thrive. So if the NDP is planning on addressing those basic needs first and truly making them a priority.
Thank you.
So there are many different ways that you can get more money into people's pocket. One of it is through taxation. That's why the Green Party is committed to lowering taxes for the lower income bracket, the ones making $65,000 or less a year, and increasing taxes for the ones that actually can afford to pay a bit more. And that's only one aspect. Another aspect is like urban sprawl. We don't look at that long-term cost of the decisions we make today. And that's one way where over time you have less and less funding, and it becomes harder and harder to have your society run in a more equitable way. So long-term is that, again, encourage people to become entrepreneurs. Make it easier for them to become entrepreneurs. Make them help them become power producers. Help them maybe get involved into vertical farming and that kind of stuff. And there's all sorts of things that we can do through small businesses where you can make everything affordable.
Karine.
I think we have to start with being accountable. Our governments have to be accountable for every tax dollar that they spend. And over the decades, I've seen less and less accountability from our governments. Auditor General reports come out. They'll look at it, they kind of laugh and, we blew this money, don't know where it went. And that's just sinking us as a city, province, and a country. There's a lot of money out there already. There are a lot of taxpayer dollars out there already, and it's just not being accounted for. It's just not being spent efficiently or in the correct places. There are too many big projects, too many election promise type projects going on. I think if we started to see more money flowing back into people, staying in people's pockets instead of going into black holes, we'd see a lot more affordability.
I'll say there's too many elections, period. And this winter elections that didn't need to happen is costing taxpayers a lot of money. So I hope people remember that when they go vote. But we need also to talk about concrete measures to help people with affordability. And the Liberal Party has thought about those questions and has come up with some concrete measures like reducing your heating and hydro bills by removing the tax, doubling benefits for people that have to rely on the Ontario Disability Support Program. It's a shame what they get. They are legislated into poverty, and we need to help them, take care of themselves. We're going to increase the OSAP, the loans for students, and we're going to lower the personal income tax for middle class. And there is something I would like to see happen as well is consider the universal basic income. Our food banks are over-solicited, and that shouldn't happen.
Thank you. You each now have a time for a closing statement. We'll start with Lucille, and we'll work towards Miriam. Lucille, your time starts now.
Thank you. So on February 27, you have a choice to make. If you want someone who has experience who will continue to fight to get you a family doctor, to improve our healthcare system, someone who will work tirelessly to find solutions to help our vulnerable people who have been left behind by this government, please put an X beside Lucille Collard, not on my sign, please. This costly election was not necessary. Doug Ford already had the strong mandate he is asking for. Let's not give it to him, and let's show him that the people of Ottawa-Vanie are not fooled by his attempt to secure a job for himself for the next 4 years, in his attempt to buy your vote with a $200 check. I'm Lucille Collard, and my only motivation is to get you a family doctor, to give you financial release, to fight the high cost of living, and to invest in our schools and our education system. Thank you.
Karine, your time starts now.
I want to unlock the potential in every resident in Ottawa-Vanie. This is a small riding that could be a great place to live, work, and play. Doug Ford called this unnecessary election because he wants to take on Trump tariffs the same way the federal Liberals took on the COVID lockdowns, by printing money and handing it out. We need less government intervention and more individual innovation and action to truly right the course for Ontario. I want to make an appeal to 3 groups of voters. New voters, the undecided, and probably the biggest, what we like to call politically homeless, who feel like they have nobody listening to their concerns. If we want to start doing politics differently, we need to have different voices around the table. If you want someone who will challenge the status quo, who will stand up for individual rights and freedoms, vote for Corrine Corcoran, Ontario Libertarian Party.
Thank you. Christian, your time starts now.
We've had the same governments and in Ottawa-Vanie, and whether it be the Liberals or the Conservatives, problems are just compounding, and it just shows that we have the wrong approach. And then really, if you want change, if we want real change, you need a different approach. And maybe something that people are overlooking. When you've been there for so long and you feel safe about it, you tend to overlook maybe the solutions. And what I'm here about is here when I knock on a lot of doors, and I mean, people want change. What people really want, they want change, but they want change. I mean, just look at what people need first. Just do the simple things well, and then everything else will become easier after. We have to start with our expectations, and we have to realize that there are certain needs that we have to look after, and if we look after our needs, it'll be cheaper for everybody in the long run, and we'll all benefit.
Thank you. Miriam, your time starts now.
Thank you for your time today. Ottawa-Vanie deserves an MPP who's going to be fighting for you, not one who assumes your vote. For over 50 years, the Liberals have treated this riding as a guarantee. And what has that done for you? Underfunded schools, a crumbling healthcare system, rising rents, and no real action to make life more affordable. The Conservatives only make it worse, but let's not forget, the Liberals started this. The NDP has a plan to fix what they've broken. We'll invest in healthcare, we'll build affordable housing, and ensure our seniors and children get the care that they deserve. We'll stand up for workers, tenants, families, not corporations or wealthy insiders. This election is a choice. More of the same with the Liberals, or real change with the NDP. Let's remind our elected officials that our votes and our voices matter. On February 27th, vote for a government that works for you. Vote for Miriam Julain for the Ontario NDP. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our candidates. Excellent debate today. Thank you so much for spending time with us here at Rogers TV. And I know that it's your turn now. It's your turn to head out to those advance polls. Head to the election booth, of course, on February the 27th is the big day. I'm going to vote in the advance poll because I don't want Mother Nature to keep me from voting. We want to make sure we get out there and talk about those important issues, healthcare, schools, and of course, what's happening with our public transit system. Lots happening. I'm Sam Laprade. Thanks for joining us for the debate.
I'm gonna get you once and for all, dog man.
What are you waiting for? Buckle up!
Do you have car seat?
A what?
A kid's car seat.
You're a cloned cat sitting in a flying mechanical bug. They don't make a car seat for that.
Let's do this.
Work is never over.
Hi, I'm Paula Roy, and it's my pleasure to welcome you back into my kitchen for another season of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. My approach to food is pretty straightforward. Fancy is fine, but when you're in a time crunch or have a really hungry and patient family to feed, I say simple recipes made with wholesome ingredients that you probably have on hand are the best. And that's exactly what you'll find on Paula Roy's Favorite Foods on Rogers TV.
Blast you.
When I was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, I was deteriorating in front of everybody. All my life, I lived with sickle cell. I went through a tragic crisis that put me in a coma for 3 weeks. While I was in there, I received a lot of blood to put me in a healthier state.
I was given the plasma then through IVIG. Even though that happened so long ago, it still has a massive impact on me today.
Thanks to donors, I can live another life.
Because of you, I will be seeing my grandchild.